Mr. Davey. I'm really glad you mentioned One Big Weekend, because this Lutonian is looking forward to it massively, even if I'm not in the right demographic anymore.
No one is in the wrong demographic. That is not how we roll.
I'm not entirely sure my constituents would agree with you there,
right.
The younger ones especially. In terms of local hires, Mr. Davey talked about 65% local hires, and that's a really good statistic. But I just wanted to ask a few questions about that 65%. Is that the same across all pay grades, or are we looking at lower pay grades being 65% and it tapering off towards the top?
Very good question. I'm not sure I've got the data. I haven't seen that data.
Okay.
So
I just wondered if there's any work that's ongoing to improve or to make sure that those local hires are reaching the highest levels within the BBC.
Totally, and I think it's a very, very good challenge, and sometimes that takes a bit of time, if I'm honest, because of the level of expertise you need, inevitably, to run 5 Live or do those. We are finding a particular dynamic, which is often people who have come to London, developed their careers, are going back, dare I say, home, to take senior roles in these areas and run them, because it's incredible opportunity for them. So while they may not be local hires all at the senior level, and I take your challenge, and I think it will take, if I'm being honest, it will take a few years to get to what you're talking about. It's definitely what we envisage.
That's good, and I think many would look at apprenticeships and the apprenticeship scheme outside of London, and a more diverse nation deserves a more diverse national broadcaster. Do you share the concerns that targets on diversity and inclusion in your apprenticeship scheme are not being met currently, and is there any particular reason for that?
Which target are you talking about specifically?
The apprenticeship scheme, you're currently not meeting the targets on diversity and inclusion.
I'm interested. Socio-economic diversity?
Yes, and diversity, I think, in ethnicity as well.
Well, specifically, I believe the issue to be, which is the socio-economic diversity of the apprenticeships. As the committee may know, that I've been pretty aggressive in setting D&I targets for the BBC of when I started at 50 2012, which was gender, BAME, and people with disabilities. The great news is we've seen really good numbers. So we're now at 50. We're now at over 17. We're now at about 9.5 declared people with disability. Now, the issue is, I also wanted, and this we've added the number 25 in, which was for socio-economic diversity, which looks at your parental occupation at 14. And the industry currently has an issue with this. At the BBC, we're about 21.1% from that lower socio-economic group, which I see as progress because it's moving up marginally. But if there's one area I'd like to see more of in the apprentice scheme, to the question, I would like to see us do better in that, bluntly, because I think we are better than the overall BBC, but we could do better. So it's a fair challenge in terms of that lower socio-economic diversity.
I just wanted to ask about the future-proofing of this across the UK programme. Because if these clusters are successful, where we might have seen some success in West Midlands, where we see some in Salford and outside of London, what are you doing in terms of making sure that you're not replicating the problem of London, but just elsewhere in the future, and ensuring that there's a pipeline of talent for people across the entire UK? For example, kids from Luton going to Norwich, if you talked about the infrastructure and how to get there in a TV studio, that just isn't there. So how are you future-proofing that?
I think the approach we're taking is one deliberately of bigger clusters and hubs, being honest, because I think, because I do think that if you are in the outlying areas, it's a bigger decision, or it's a less decision to go into some of these areas that are near to you versus going to London. This is sensitive territory, because I think we can produce a drama anywhere. But when you're really locating, and also our budgets are such that you don't want to be building studios everywhere, and we're a broadcast operation, so you need a studio, you need a radio studio, you need infrastructure. And if we spread ourselves too thin, I think the financial effectiveness of this will diminish, but we want to be suitably dispersed. So I think, therefore, you do see us saying, okay, we can make drama anywhere. Technology allows you to broadcast from local radio stations we need everywhere. and we've got 70 locations across all that across the BBC, whether I'm in Aberdeen or whatever, that remains and is precious. But in terms of these hubs where you're really getting a career that you can get to your earlier question, a senior level, if we could see that operationally in Glasgow, Cardiff, Birmingham, Salford, I think would be, and a thriving sector in the northeast, that would be a massive step forward in terms of how people think about getting into this industry. And I would probably prioritise that over for the network output, trying to get every postcode, because I think at this point we'd have another discussion with this committee.